welcome. What does that mean? We'll figure that out in a second. And then more tough talk out of Trump to Amazon and the Washington Post today. And as always, we close with our gallery of the stupid. But Iran and an early morning all caps tweet from the president. Let's discuss what this means with Scott Uehlinger, former CIA station chief. Scott, welcome. Thank you. Let's put up this tweet in all caps that President Trump sent to the Iranian President Rouhani. Never, ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words or violence of death. Be cautious. What does this tweet mean, Scott?
Well, I was actually taken aback. It was very strongly worded, even for the president, but I think it's appropriate. Rouhani and the religious leadership in Iran is furious that over the weekend, Secretary of State Pompeo had basically a forum at the Reagan Library talking about the need for freedom of speech in Iran as the country continues to be beset by demonstrations and people angry at the economic situation. So Rouhani lashed out, and in turn was the president lashed out, and I think it's going to give the Iranians some pause.
And I want to get to that question in a second, but this notion of us trying to speak directly to the Iranian people, Scott, to me that makes all the sense in the world, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And there are some people, saying, oh, this is a neocon thing. And I disagree. The Iranian people have traditionally been, it's a very old culture. It very much predates Islam. And the people there are really tired of the regime. That's why you're seeing political and economic demonstrations throughout the country. And you have been for almost a year now. And so these people need to be empowered. So taking a page from the Reagan playbook of doing the same with Russian and Soviet dissidents, we're trying to do the same kind of thing in Iran. And it's not going to involve any U.S. involvement in Iran. But the Iranian people are tired, and they appreciate the American people supporting them, which is what the Obama administration did not do in 2009.
Yeah, exactly. So Rouhani lashes out. The president responds, Scott, with this tweet. Let me just ask an interesting question. Do the Iranian people, will they see the president's tweet? Do they see it?
That's actually a very good question. Now, the internet is very closely controlled there. It's possible that that may have leaked through, because this is, I guess, it's the Twitter account of the leader of Rouhani. And so thus, if he tweeted something out, the reply very well could have gotten through some of the censors. And so it's possible that some of the people have seen it. But I also think that this is the type of thing that even if they didn't actually see it, the word on the street is going to get out very quickly about this. This is the kind of thing it's very hard to keep a secret of in Iranian culture. So I think it's really going to get out to the people, whether they have actually seen it or not.
So then, Scott, the million-dollar question, how does Rouhani react to a tweet like this?
I think that you'll actually see kind of silence with this. The Iranians are very good at pushing it, but they know their limits, and they tend to withdraw after that. They know, for instance, despite the threats, they know that their military is no match for the United States. However, they do know that in the gray area of conflict, ill-defined conflict, that they have the upper hand. So they prefer to keep kind of an ambiguous status there. They don't want to go into overall war, but and they benefit from this kind of uncertain peace. So they're going to want to preserve that. And remember, the number one priority of the Rouhani regime is preservation of their own heads.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, isn't it, and again, I know you've probably been asked this question a bunch, but the fact that a lot of these bad guys around the world, like Kim and Rouhani and the rest, they don't quite know what to make of this president. He's pretty unpredictable. Strategically, that's a good thing, right?
It's an absolutely fantastic thing. For at least 30 years, we have been way too unimaginative in our foreign policy, and we've always been very predictable. And so we're throwing in a lot of uncertainty in here with everyone, and it's thrown them very much off balance, especially the North Koreans and the Iranians. And Iran is the country that I have, I worked against the Iranian target as a CIA officer often, so I'm very familiar with it. I was in Azerbaijan, right on the border with Iran. And Iran is the country, is really, if you want to call an enemy of the United States, Iran would be the one. North Korea has its problems, but Iran has waged a war against the Western world since 1979. We don't want to acknowledge it, but it's a fact. And so, the money that was transferred by the Obama administration was certainly used to blow up little children and people, innocent people all over the world. And they are that regime is a true threat. And I think that Rouhani understands that that is the way he is viewed by Trump. And so I think they're going to start treading very carefully, because it wouldn't take much to have some shots fired in the Persian Gulf.
Scott, I think that's such an important point to make. So many of the American people, we look at Kim Jong-un in North Korea and we think, oh my God, he's such a bad actor. But as far as a threat to the United States of America, it's so interesting to get your perspective. Iran is a much greater threat, aren't they?
Right. And the other thing that you need to understand about Iran is there are a great deal of Iranian diaspora, people who fled the regime, who especially in the L.A. area, but all over the United States. I'm friends with several of them. And these people still have family in Iran. And so kind of like the way Poland was in the Cold War, there's a lot of people who have relatives in the United States and elsewhere. So when the state-controlled media is constantly talking about the big state in America and the little state in Israel, the people know they're being lied to, because they've got, their cousin in California is sending them sneakers through the mail. And so they understand that life in America is infinitely better than life under that, tyrannical regime.
So, Scott, is Trump, in your eyes, is Trump trying to go down the same road here with Rouhani that he went with Kim? I mean, for a year, Trump was throwing every insult he could throw at him on Twitter, calling him Rocket Man and the like, and eventually that got Kim to the table. Is Trump trying to do the same thing with Rouhani?
I think it's possible. I have to admit, I find it. I was talking about the possibility of a North Korean meeting with Trump, a year before it happened. It seemed kind of a stretch, but I have to admit that meeting with the Iranian regime is perhaps even more of a stretch than meeting with North Korea. It is possible, but certainly what Iran does see is a strong, resurgent American foreign policy that is clear and well-defined, and they watch how we react with North Korea, how we deal with Russia and China, and I think they realize now that the adults are in charge and they'd better watch where they step. We haven't had any incidents at sea with the Iranian Navy as we had under the Obama administration several times, and you're not going to see any more of that as the Iranians begin to continue to tread a lot more carefully.
So, Scott, last question, silence or belligerence, what do you expect to see and or hear from Iran following this threat from the president?
I think you're going to see some silence now. I think the Iranians, because even I was sort of taken aback. That was a pretty aggressive tweet. I have to hand it to the president, and I think that is going to make them really think twice, because the Iranians are very good at bluffing. They're very good at that type of thing. However, they really shy away from direct conflict. They want to dominate their opponent, but they know their own abilities, and they're going to shy away from open conflict. So you watch, they're going to be a little quieter on the world stage.
Boy, great stuff, great stuff. Scott Uehlinger. Scott, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe.
Tough talk from Trump today toward Amazon and Washington Post. What does that mean? Next.